Hey everyone, alright, today I want to talk to you guys about the different ways that boats are measured, in particularly length of hull, which is kind of the way that old school boats used to be measured, and versus length overall, and why it actually matters, because it really does, and I don't want you guys to get caught out. And I'll also mention a few of the brands that are using each, and a few of the things you should be aware of when searching for boats on the internet, because their specifications don't obviously always tell the whole story. Alright, let's go. Alright, length of hull. So length of hull is a measurement that you won't see on many manufacturers' websites anymore, because look, my boat is actually a better example for demonstrating length of hull, because it's obviously very straightforward. How long is the actual hull itself at the longest point, so not including anything that's kind of bolted on or or welded on or anything like that. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if you can imagine, literally measuring from the back of this boat here, the actual hull, all the way to the front of the boat here. I know this is very dumb, but sort of stopping here. So length of hull is a way that some boats are still measured, but a lot of boats are not measured that way, or at least not advertised that way, I should say. And often boats that had pods and things on the back of them the pod would not be included in the length of the hull measurement, especially if it didn't extend from the waterline. So when you see people talking about length of hull, it is very much more of a true measurement of the hull itself. So the length of this hull, off memory, is 7.01 meters, so we're talking about a genuine 23-foot boat here, basically. and why that matters, because I guess when you're talking about the length and the size of actual boats, it's about how much boat is in the actual water that is going to, I guess, determine how well it's going to handle in the water. If you've got all these things bolted on and welded on, making the boat stick out and be longer or appear longer above the waterline, you have to consider whether that's actually going to improve the handling of the boat. For example, even when we're talking about pods on the back of boats, when they're sitting above the waterline and there's no part of the pod is actually assisting the buoyancy of the boat or anything like that, a lot of pods are questionable when they're in that sort of format, whether they improve the handling of the boat. A lot of the time they don't actually improve the handling, and they can be detrimental. Alright, so length of hull is pretty straightforward. There's also other measurements out there which I guess you won't see very often, like length on water or length over water, and that's more about where the hull displaces the actual water, how much boat is in the water, but virtually no trailer boats are measured using that sort of determination. Alright, now let's get into length overall, because this is the main measurement that I have a major problem with. So this is what I want to talk to you guys about. Alright, length overall is a funny one. So it is quite literally, the definition of it roughly is the total length of the boat, including anything that is a permanent fixture or fitting to the boat. So that will include things like outboard pods. So that basically, when length overall came in, the first thing that manufacturers started doing, and it basically started in the plate market from what I saw, they started including outboard pods on the back of your transom. So when you see something like a bar crusher or a Surtees, they've actually got an extended pod sitting out, let's say about this far, okay, and it is purely, really, it's not even a pod, okay, A pod to me is something that extends the waterline of the boat. A rough definition, okay? These things that stick out and they're literally, they're just an engine bracket, okay? Because it's not helping the boat handle any better or anything like that at all. There's no sort of buoyancy or flotation. So plate alloy manufacturers started including these outboard brackets or outboard pods in their measurements a handful of years ago. So what that essentially means is the boat was able to grow in the specification sheet quite substantially due to that measurement, even though the boat was actually no bigger. So why did they do that? Well, lots of reasons, okay? Basically, in my opinion, it definitely was a money-making thing, okay? Because if you look at something like a bar crusher, 620 bar crusher suddenly became a 670. A 560, which was really an 18-foot bar crusher, roughly an 18-foot, became a 610, then a 615. So all of a sudden it looks like a 20-foot boat when it's not, okay? The hull itself is still basically an 18-foot boat. It handles like an 18-foot boat. But hey, the boats sound bigger, that means we can ask more money for them. And also what started happening is, as brands started doing this, the FOMO thing kicked in. Okay, other brands realized that if they kept advertising the same way, it actually disadvantaged them because it made their boats look too expensive for the size of the actual boat. So I think a lot of manufacturers probably didn't want to go down this path of, you know, it's not lying, but it's not kosher in my opinion. Let's just put it that way. I won't go any further than that. But I think a lot of them went down this path for fear of missing out on sales for other manufacturers. Then the other thing they started doing, which was even more hilarious, and this is not the best example, but plate alloy boats, they started pushing the boundaries even further by welding on the bowsprits at the front of their boats, okay? Because if the bowsprit was welded on, it too could be included in the actual length. So what we now have is a bunch of plate alloy boats, I'll get to glass in a second, a bunch of plate alloy boats on the market, which are claiming to be, you know, anywhere from 50 to 80 centimeters at times bigger than they actually are, bigger than the actual true hull length. Now, it took a while, okay, but the fiberglass crowd actually caught on to this as well, okay? So all the plate boats I've spoken about before basically do this, right? Surtees, Bar Crusher, Yellowfin, Extreme, Stabia, they all do it, okay? They all include their measurements are from the absolute furthest point of the boat at the back to the absolute furthest point of the boat, including bowsprit, including pods, including engine brackets, etc. Okay, so that's just how they operate. So then the fiberglass boats started doing the same thing. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. And the funniest thing is that some of the manufacturers, by the way, in the fiberglass segment, Haynes Signature for one, go have a look at them. It's actually quite hilarious what they've done. Based on those rules, they've genuinely molded out the front of their boats in fiberglass. Like, imagine from here, you've got this big long fiberglass snout. The boats have grown like Pinocchio's nose, because, you know, it is bloody deceptive, let's face it. This big snout comes all the way out and it's really long, okay, and their boats have physically grown using the same sort of trick as the plate alloy guys, but you're not actually getting any bigger boat. And why does it matter? Well, firstly, like I went back, okay, you've got the whole money factor of people being borderline deceptive about the size of their boats, right? Fine, put that aside. But it also matters because of your carrying capacity. Now, boats are obviously measured on their length versus their width to determine how many people they can carry. So the other thing that's going on in boats these days, and most of the brands I've just mentioned do it, but basically, let's have a look at the back of my boat here. As you can see, let's look at those back sides. They're actually very, very vertical, okay? So, you know, the beam of this boat is just under 2.5 meters, but as you can see, the sides of the boat are very vertical. So that beam is wide all the way down across the back of the boat. So at the top and at the bottom. So all of these, not all of them, but a lot of these boat manufacturers now, what they're doing is they're increasing the width of their boats as well as their length, because the width of your boat is measured simply at the widest point of the boat. So if you could imagine looking at the back of this boat, if these sides of this boat were angled out really wide like that, it would make this boat wider. It wouldn't make it any wider down at the hull here. So this is what a lot of the plate guys are doing now. So if you go look at a Surtees, for example, a plate boat, the sides literally spread right out like this. I doubt there's any more width down here than there is at, say, a bar crusher. But if you look at their spec sheet, for the length, they're all a little bit wider than the bar crusher. No surprise there. But is the hull actually any wider? Does it handle any better because of the width? I'm not so sure, because like I said, the sides angle way out, okay, on Surtees and a lot of the actual plate boats. So they're pushing the boundaries width to width as well, okay? So the width it's basically a fake width, okay, because it's not the actual width of the hull. Now, Haynes Signature does something like this as well. They basically all the boats over about 6 meters have got, I think, a 2.5 meter beam, okay, which allows them to rate for more persons carrying and all that sort of stuff. But if you have a look at them, have a look at their website from a vertical view, the sides spread out so wide that it's basically useless for fishing, because you can't get your thighs up against the side combing or anything like that, because they're spread out so far. You'd have to be physically leaning over forward. So they've got these enormous wide side pockets in them to compensate for them. The sides are way over. You'd have to be leaning all the way forward. So they're a rubbish design, okay, for a fishing boat, right? So they've extended the length of them with this fake front. They've extended the width of them by splaying the sides right out, and they're marketing them as being a lot bigger boats than they actually are. And a lot of them actually have a carrying capacity of up to 8 persons. And if you look at the equivalent size Haynes Hunter, they'll only have 6 persons, okay? And that is because the Haynes hasn't gone down that path. They've stuck true to their brand as being a serious offshore fishing boat. You know, you've got the ability to brace up against the sides. There's no sort of fake measurements and that sort of stuff. Don't get me wrong, Haynes has re-rated their boats, like 650s became 675s, 600s became 625s, but they haven't gone to that extreme of actually changing their hulls on the front or on the sides. So look, it matters. You buy these boats, you see the sizes of them on a website, and your boat basically turns up and it's nowhere near as big as you thought. But obviously the lesson is that if you're measuring up a boat, you really need to measure it across the transom, across the bottom, length of actual hull, not length overall, because the bottom line is it's a bit of a stitch up, okay? I remember when both of my 670 bar crushers turned up, and I was aware of it, okay? I wasn't ignorant, but I was very underwhelmed in the size of those boats for apparent 6.7 meter boats. Like, this boat absolutely dwarfs a 670 bar crusher. It is probably, it even dwarfs a 730, okay? It's probably hull size and dimensions, it's closer to like a 780 bar crusher or a 750 Surtees. So anyway, do your research, go into it with your eyes open. All is not as it seems with these boats. Some brands still are old school about it. Like if you go look at a North Bank, they are a big boat, okay, for their advertised size. And yeah, so some boats are basically doing the right thing, but to me, length overall is absolutely ridiculous. and people that are playing that game should basically be ashamed of themselves, because I do find it quite deceptive to customers like you guys. So anyway, keen to know what you guys think about that topic. Let me know any other brands you think are doing this, and let me know of any brands that you think that are doing the right thing by customers here by being genuine with their measurements, and I'll chat to you guys soon.